Please. Thank you.
Good morning. We are delighted to have you here, and we would ask to find places so that we can begin the convocation. I'm Earl Alton. I'm the interim dean of the college and delighted to be able to welcome you to this event, the 1999 Christensen Symposium with the theme of spirituality and racial diversity in the context of the city. We have some special guests today. We have representatives from Gustavus Adolphus College, and then we have two groups that are joining us via teleconferencing, and you can see the monitors around the room. The first is Concordia College in Moorhead, and I was told to pause a moment while they got a chance to see us. And the second is the Spirit in the Desert Lutheran Retreat Center in Carefree, Arizona. It is really a treat to be able to share a symposium with persons that are not able physically to be here, but can enjoy and partake in the symposium in this way. So again, welcome to all of you. We are delighted that you could be here, and I will now call on Philip Quanbeck, Assistant Professor of Religion, who will tell us about the Christensen Endowment and Symposium. Philip?
Thank you, Dean. Greetings to you all on behalf of the Christensen Endowment Committee, to which I am a faculty representative. My task is just to tell you a little bit about Bernard Christensen, the sixth president of Augsburg College, and the reason for the endowment and the reason for this convocation. Bernard Christensen, the sixth president of Augsburg from 1938 to 1962, left a deep and profound impact on those students and faculty with whom he worked. Christensen came first in 1932 as a professor of theology. Not unfamiliar with controversy, he defended the critical study of the Bible, arguing that it could serve the purposes of faith and Christian proclamation. As president of this college, Augsburg, and with its seminary then, Augsburg became a truly liberal arts college, as Christensen not only supported its theological program, but also programs in sciences and the social sciences, and as presidents did in those days, collected excellent faculty, men and women of character. He was known as someone who combined a profound interest, academic interest and commitment to the liberal arts with a profound Christian faith. And for Christensen, Christian faith was more than just intellectual assertion, it was also experience. The students of Christensen's day would have sung the spiritual and the gospel music of the American experience, and that continuity was reflected last night in our gospel music program. Though students from that era told me one thing the students of the Christensen era would not have done is dared to move during the singing of gospel music, or they would have been spoken to the next day. But we have to allow for changes in time and be grateful for them as well. Christensen realized this college was part of the city. He was part of Hubert Humphrey's Human Rights Commission and worked for causes and purposes of serving this city. Under Christensen, the college's slogan, "Ord blev kött," the word became flesh, had added to it education for service. And for that meant, for Christensen, that meant Christian service. He is remembered on this campus with a campus center named after him, a sculpture called the Burning Bush, which stands outside that campus center, which captures, perhaps only partly, the sense of Christensen's spirit and commitment to the gospel and its liberating power. He was known, too, for his personal care and concern and knowledge of faculty and students. And it's that kind of person we remember today. The endowment was created by students of Christensen's, faculty who worked with him to perpetuate his memory, but more importantly, to continue the tradition and the mindset, the commitment which Christensen represented. The first installment of that endowment was the creation of this convocation. It's hoped eventually to endow a professorship as a symbol of what that kind of Christian commitment, both to the gospel and to the world, means for this college and its mission. They're still with us today. We're grateful Christensen's own daughters. Two are here with us today, I think, Sonia Stephen and Nadia Christensen. Are you, either of you, here? Well, they're perhaps shy. But let's give them, there. And Christensen's wife, Gracia, also taught at this college, and it was more than just a one-man show, I assure you. That's to let you know this is a living tradition at this college. And for that family, for Christensen's work, and for the work of the endowment, to which we would still invite people to contribute if they feel moved, we give our great words of appreciation. And with that, I would like to introduce Ida Simon, Vice President for Institutional Advancement at Augsburg College.
Good morning and thank you. It is indeed an honor for me to stand before you to introduce to you one of my favorite persons. I met Dr. Forbes more than 19 years ago in New York City. I heard him speaking during the year of Jubilee at Canaan Baptist Church in Harlem. And it was at that time that I realized that this was a unique individual called to rightfully divide the word of truth given to us by our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. It was a few years after that, when I became a student at Union Theological Seminary, that I became more acquainted with Dr. Forbes and his work, realizing that he was a man who was for justice and peace. He was in and out of every little porthole that he could find, I think, where people called him to do different ministries and lectures across the country. But I became more acquainted with his charismatic style when I enrolled in his homiletics class while a student at Union. It was at that time that I learned a little about developing a sermon, and that a sermon should have at least 3 points that will call us to action when we completed our presentation to an audience. After graduating from seminary, it was in 1988, Dr. Forbes, that you and I were prayer partners on a trip sponsored by Plowshares to South Africa. And this was in the height of the apartheid era, and it was during this period that I really realized that this man was an ambassador for Christ, not only in New York and Harlem and in the United States, but anywhere he went. It was so amazing how he represented us as black Americans to people who were really trying to hold a group of people down. I do say with all my heart that Augsburg is very blessed to experience the wealth of knowledge and the love and commitment to the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ that we're going to experience today. In 1989, Dr. Forbes became the 5th and first African-American pastor of Riverside Church in New York City, one of the largest multicultural churches in the nation. It has a membership of more than 2,400 people. Betty A. Davis, the chair of the church council, said, and I quote, When Dr. Forbes came to Riverside 10 years ago, he brought with him a vision of a just world based on God's unconditional love for all. Our millennium theme is designed to guide us in our mission to make that vision real. Dr. Forbes has 12 honorary degrees, a Doctor of Ministry degree from Colgate-Rochester Divinity School, a Master of Divinity degree from Union Theological Seminary, and a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry from Howard University. He travels the United States and abroad doing lectures and preaching. In 1997, at Penn State, he was featured lecturer on the topic Emancipation from Poverty. In 1998, he completed a semester as inaugural Luth lecturer at the Harvard Divinity School, devoting his lectures to the theme of urban ministry. Also in 1998, he participated in the Justice Roundtable on Youth Violence at the White House and delivered the keynote address at the President's Initiative on Race meeting in New Orleans. Dr. Forbes was Union's first Joe R. Engel Professor of Preaching from 1985 to 1989. After hearing Dr. Forbes during a lecture at Princeton, Joe Engel decided to give Union a $1.2 million gift to fund the chair that would enable Dr. Forbes to teach others about the Holy Spirit in preaching and his style of delivery. Prior to that, he was the Brown and Sockman Associate Professor of Preaching. Dr. Forbes is a preacher, a pastor, an educator, an administrator, a community activist, an author, an interfaith leader, and unlike many of you may not know this, but he and his wife do a lot of music ministry. Dr. Forbes has written over 40 poems, and he writes a lot of music on a regular basis. Hopefully we'll have the honor of him publishing that within the next millennium. He has been married to Betty. I'll give you a little space to do that. He's so busy. He's been married to Betty Forbes for 36 years, and they have one son, 27-year-old James A. Forbes III. If you want more information about Dr. Forbes and the Riverside Church, you can surf the web, www.riverside at, I don't know the whole one, but it's on the web. There's great information about him. And for the sake of time, I would like to introduce to some and present to others Dr. James A. Forbes II.
Thank you so very much, Ida, and for giving me a full millennium to get my work together. To all of the officers and members of the staff and administration and student body at Augsburg College, and to the visiting friends from this community, I am so pleased to have the opportunity to be present as a part of the Christensen Symposium, and I am so glad that my spirit is in such resonance with his spirit as I have read about his commitment to truth, whether it is ecclesiastical or whether it comes from the other arts and sciences, to a sense of commitment not only to the inward journey of faith, but to the manifestation of care and concern for the community, so that I do feel a sense of at-homeness in this setting because of the one for whom this symposium is named. Now, I want to get right down to business. I think what I say about myself is probably true for you. There's a song inside of me. I can hardly wait to see what it is I have to say or the music I will play. It's been so long in coming, first the thought, then some humming, but before I find my key, something stifles it in me. What keeps my song from being sung? Past hurts, deep fears, a timid tongue. What makes my freedom come so hard? A self-made live-in prison guard. Meanwhile, my song still groans in me. I am not me till my song is set free. debating, hesitating, getting ready to sing, my song could die like a stillborn thing. Release your song, said the Spirit to me. Be free. Be free. It's Jubilee. Cast out each fearsome song patrol. Proclaim deliverance to your soul. The Spirit of life flowed through my blood. I said, yes. Something broke. It came like a flood. Up from within, down from above. A kingdom built on the power of love. Thank God my song has been set free. And the rhythm and the words are right for me. I'm finally ready to sing out strong. My soul is saying, this is my song. My assumption is that there's a song in each one of us. And my purpose for standing before you is to suggest one expression of the full and free expression of your song and our songs together. So the theme of my presentation today is the recruitment of human race activists. That's what I want to suggest. I have a feeling that if we could come to sing our song together, what glorious music we would make for the humanization of the earth and the glorification of the God who has given us life. So, I'm happy that I'm here in the month of October, because I know that if I wait until the spring of the year, there will be other recruiters descending upon this campus, some from graduate programs urging you to come. We will help you to refine your gifts for your productivity in the days ahead. Some from industry asking you to lend your gifts for the promotion of their enterprise and the enrichment of your own life and your resources. But thank God I got here first. I am here really to recruit each and every one of you for a vocation that is so important. And the theme of this series of lectures, I believe, has to do with helping us to learn to combine our spirituality with our commitment to pluralistic sophistication, learning that as this college itself sits in a geographic area that combines more of the people of the earth than perhaps any other city in closer direction. New York City, we've got them all strung out all over the various boroughs. But you, right here, you in the middle of some of God's people brought from all around the world. And it is a wonderful laboratory for you to discover what it means to be one people living together. As Dr. King talked about it, the world house, where we are the offspring of Creator God, mother and father of us all. And if we could learn how to be one family together, where each person is loved by God as if that person was the only person, and yet loved together so that we bring the richness of our own being to bear upon the building of a household of God. You have the unique opportunity in this location to learn how to do that. And if you could learn how to do that, then you could teach the world to sing in perfect harmony, or even incorporate dissonance as progressive contemporary music provides, but to put it all in a framework of a song offered unto God. So that's why I'm here to recruit you. And the reason I need to recruit you is because we are in very serious times. It is strange that at the beginning of a millennium, it is as if all of the transcendent forces are released, both good and bad. And in terms of racial dynamic, I am 64 years old. I was brought up in the South. I participated in the sit-in movement. I was arrested. I marched. I sang 99 verses of We Shall Overcome just like everybody else. I've been through that. Actually, I thought that phase was over. It is really weird to discover that we are right back there. And in some degree, it's subtle, but now it's coming out and it's ugly. The forces that are pulling us apart. Racism, classism, strong, such that within the culture itself, over the net, the web, communities are linking up, dedicated to the promotion of the superiority of some and encouraging a spirit that leads towards the extermination of others. And it's out there. Kids at night in their own rooms are able to pick up a fellowship of those who believe that special races have special responsibility to cleanse the earth of the others, and that others are an inconvenience for the well-being of some. Now, this is serious. This is new. This is so that when we hear about Columbine High, or when we hear about the Jewish Community Center where kids were sprayed with bullets, and as you hear about Atlanta, they are now developing in the Justice Department a kind of mosaic of the places where it's breaking out. Oh, we had gotten used to black folks killing black folks in the ghetto. I mean, that's good. In fact, that's good work. Let them clean them out. But now, this thing is becoming so real that a subsection of America is dedicated to the perpetration of violence against each other. And while it was on the fringes, and for a while we could say it's at a state like that, now respectable communities like this will find increasing incidents of the brutality in the name of ethnic superiority, or the preservation of class advantage for some to the elimination of others. Now, this all is just deja vu for me. What I really want to do in the time I have is to take a quick flashback, because some of you young people don't know that what's happening now is the return, like as if an operation for cancer had the verdict, we got it all, and only now are we discovering, no, if it's bigotry and hatred and the spirit of discrimination and racism, they didn't get it all. Perhaps it was submerged, but it is in the body. Or to take another image, outbreak, that the virus of hate and the virus of insecurity was transmitted from community to community. But now it is an airborne virus which crosses over the fences of the gated communities of community protection against the other. But let me not get too ahead of myself. I want to tell you all something very quickly about what it used to be like. And to say it's back now. And to say that the reason I'm here is because I want to recruit you. You can't be neutral anymore. Just to be American, watch TV, just to watch community patterns, just to look at structures, organizational, you will be, by a kind of natural assimilation, absorbed into the acceptability of racial distinctions and the reward with power, prerogatives, and a sense of preciousness for some to the exclusion of the other. If you don't make a choice, choices will have been made for you. But let's go back, and I'm not going to be all this stern throughout the whole talk. There will be a chance for lightening up a little bit here and there. But let me first face into the ugliness of the past that I knew something about. Some of you all didn't know about this. When I grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina, just such a simple thing as childhood enjoyment of going downtown with my parents. If we were in Woolworth, and it's strange that Woolworth has gone out of business as a five and dime, but everybody used to know about Woolworth, right? If we shopped even for school supplies, and we smelled the good food, people who look like me, by the way, some older people know this, but some of you young people don't know, people that look like me could not go to the lunch counter at Woolworth and go and buy hot dogs, okay? We would have to go outside to the window or either down to the end and carry it out because we were not to sit in the counter because you look like me. You didn't know that, did you? You knew that? You didn't. So it was in 1961 when, as a result of some sit-ins that started in 1960, and Jesse Jackson was a part of that group at A&T College where the sit-in movement started. And my brother was the president of the student body at Shaw University, and they marched in order to say it ought not to be that some folks can eat at a lunch counter and others can't, though that's just a symbol. You couldn't go to the motels or the hotels. You couldn't buy houses in communities. You couldn't go to certain schools. In fact, when I applied to Duke University to go to divinity school, they wrote me back and said, we do not accept colored students, nor do we intend to do so for the foreseeable future. You believe that? That's why I'm going to take a little time to tell you why I'm trying to recruit you, because somebody else is trying to recruit you back into that mentality. And it is manifested even now, though it is not as clear. So that's why I'm here today. So anyway, I was so glad that on January the 11th, 1961, and I was born in 1935, was the first day of my life that I could go and sit down at a lunch counter in Woolworth, and I was proud of myself, had my money together, went down and sat down at the lunch counter for the first time because the sit-in movement had finally broken that barrier down. And I already knew what I was going to get, brother. I was going to get myself a hot dog with mustard and relish and ketchup and maybe some sauerkraut on it and also a big orange. That's what I knew. I knew exactly what I was going to get. And when I went in there and I sat down at the lunch counter, a strange thing happened. There was a white woman sitting next to where I finally sat down. When she saw that I was there, although her food had just come, she got up and ran out of that store just because a black somebody like me had sat down beside her. It was a painful moment. It was devastating to me. So much so until I do not know now whether I ever put in my order. In fact, I don't, but I'd almost have to have hypnosis to maybe cast me back, because a lot of things we experience we bury because it's too painful to bear. I don't know whether I bought my hot dog or not. I do know this. I went home and sat down, and these are the words I wrote. Why did she move when I sat down? Surely she could not tell so soon that my Saturday bath had worn away, or that savage passion had pushed me for a rape. Perhaps it was the cash she carried in her purse. She could not risk a theft so early in the month. And who knows that on tomorrow 'twould fall her lot to drink her coffee from a cup my darkened hands had clutched. So horrible was that moment. I too should have run away. For prejudice has the odor of a dying beast. Whether rapist or racist, both fall in the savage class. And the greatest theft of all is to rob one's right to be. Now, to lighten up a little bit, see, I'm going to explain to you why I'm here to recruit you. I had forgotten that I had written that poem in 1961. But it was brought back to my attention when a white woman who was a member of my church at Riverside Church, where I became the first African-American senior minister, said, "Pastor, I have a letter you wrote me in 1961. This was 1991 or later, 30 years later. This woman called Dorothy Marcus was working in Raleigh at the same time, which is why I'm saying there's prejudice going to be around a long time, but every now and then God has to recruit somebody to stand in the gap to be a human race activist. She was working in Raleigh at the Hillsborough Street United Church. Colin Kilburn was the pastor, and she was working with black kids and helping us to see that there was a future for us all. And so the relationship between myself and that white woman, you see, all white women aren't the same, and all black folks aren't the same. God will recruit from black folks and white folks, whoever is willing to be recruited. She was so close to me that when I wrote that poem, I sent her a copy of it. I had lost my copy, but she had kept her copy, and she gave it back to me. Now I'm her pastor. This woman was then the head of the Racial Justice Commission at the Riverside Church. Still 30 years later, still trying to help us be related as human beings. You see, the point I'm making is Dorothy Marcus, even back there, in every age, God has some folks who are committed to togetherness. And that's why as militias are being trained in the hill countries, some in New York and Connecticut and in Minnesota and Montana and Idaho and all of that, God is looking for some folks who will be committed to human race activism. Let me tell you, that is why I'm here. Let me say something about human race activism. You see, by saying human race activists, I am challenging everybody to figure out what you're going to do with your race. Because everybody in here has one, more or less. The real issue is what you're going to do with it. You see, some of you are black and some of you are white. If I tell the whole truth, you can only use these terms if you frame them right. Anybody in here ever had a ticket where they were printed, you could have a tear off, but it said that this ticket is invalid if separated? Anybody have had that experience? The ticket was not valid if it's separated. So it is with race. If you are black and you allow your blackness to cause you to tear itself off from the rest of the human race, whatever God had in mind as some possibility of grace in your race, it becomes invalid. If you are white, the one sitting next to you, if you are white and you tear off your whiteness in restricted communities, living with your advantages and your prerogatives and your power, and with an air of superiority, then your whiteness in regards to God's plan is invalid.
white folks and black folks and brown folks and red folks and yellow folks that allow themselves to think of their destiny apart from the other, it makes you a disappointment to the God that made you. It makes you a tear off from the nexus of being. In other words, let me say this plainly. Race, I got to asking myself, what is race good for and what is race bad for? Race is bad. Race is a bad thing. In fact, I think we ought to really eliminate the concept of race. It's an artificial construct anyway. I know, but let me tell you what it's bad for. Race is bad for using this exterior as a way of promoting ourselves to the exclusion of others. Race is bad for some people, assuming that God expects them to be the leaders and the controllers of everything, and everybody's destiny and everybody's values must be measured by your own. Race is bad for that. Race is bad for colonizing oneself with a protected enclosure that excludes into economic deprivation other kind of folks. Race is bad for simply getting into a clique where you and your crowd only are considered to be worthy of the best of everything. Race is bad when you try to take yourself, your crowd, your crew, and use everybody else in relationship to your ego needs. Race is bad for that. But now race could be good in this regard. Race could be good if you used race as a way of identifying so that little kids come up can see people that look like them and become a kind of mirror of care. Race is good maybe as a primary identification with others. Race may be good as a way of letting certain people show special care for one another in the nursery stage of life. Even a plant has to sometimes be in a plant bed. Race is maybe a good thing for cultivating certain values, even certain tastes, only if its cultivation is toward the participation in the human race. Did y'all hear what I'm saying? To be a racist is an aborted human being, because your natural racialistic benefits have now crystallized into an unnatural previous state of being that blocks the fuller development into full humanity. You see, let me say this. Race, the only purpose for race may be affirmative action. That's the purpose for race. Let me explain this to you. There are two kinds of affirmative action. And nobody who's going to be human can fully develop as a human being without affirmative action. Nobody can develop as a human being fully without affirmative action. But there are two kinds of affirmative action. Your kind of affirmative action is when you had childhood pneumonia, bad cold, earache, people gave you affirmative action. I know they did. They took care of you. They spent money to take care of you. You couldn't take care of yourself. In fact, they sacrificed for whatever your needs were. Aren't you appreciative of that? That was affirmative action, but there are two kinds of affirmative actions. The affirmative action for the self and affirmative action for others. And most folks, if they think about it, are grateful for affirmative action for the self. Where they get apoplexy is when it's affirmative action for the others. Am I talking good? See? Race is a form of primary group relationship affirmative action. If it stops there, that is the beginning of hell on earth. It is the beginning of destruction. In fact, let me move on because I need to get to the Bible before I finish this talk. I'm really not here to recruit you for human race activism. I've got a more ambitious project, but I cannot share it all now, but I'll give you a hint about it. What I really am about is based on some reading that I've been doing lately, since my background was scientific, and Dr. Christensen would appreciate that, I've been reading Friedrich Capra. Any of y'all read him? In the book entitled The Web of Life, or the Tao of Physics, or The Turning Point. Because the new physics is reminding us that there is a shift in paradigm. And I'd simply like to read you just one section of that. To be intelligent today, you got to begin to shift from that old paradigm to a broader understanding. Let me describe this. The old paradigm, which is receding, which has dominated our culture for several hundred years, consists of a number of entrenched ideas and values which are in us unless we are recruited out of it. These values are as follows. The view of the universe as a mechanical system composed of elementary binding blocks, building blocks, the atomistic theories. That's passing away, y'all. You are not who you are fully. They used to act like the atom was the basic unit of reality. But no more. There are more particles beneath the atom. You physics students, tell them, you all know what they are. Tell them what they are. We can bust that atom all up. Come on, some of y'all, physics mates, help me out. Quarks, yes, and quirks too, and neutrinos. In fact, there is more of a mass of neutrinos that we do not know anything about than the protons and the neutrons and the electrons and the positrons. And there are so many subatomic particles that you can't even match them. The old view that I can be complete in myself as one atom of human race, complete in myself. That's an old paradigm. That's passing away. Even my African brothers told me about it. In Africa, they used to say, I am because we are. They were very scientific, even in a primitive understanding. The view of the human body as a machine, that's passing away. We are more than mechanisms. The view of life in society as a competitive struggle for existence, that's passing away. The belief in unlimited material progress to be achieved through economic and technological growth, that's passing away. The belief that a society in which the female is everywhere, subsumed under the male, is one of those ideas that is passing away. The view that white folks are God's favorite sons and daughters, that's passing away. And the view that we learn in our community that the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice, that's passing away. It's all passing. That Asians, Native Americans, the first citizens know that any one of us is a favorite child of God. God has said, no, I didn't say that. I never said that. I never said that. No, I love all my children the same. I never said it. I never said it. But the new paradigm is a holistic worldview, seeing the world as an integrated whole rather than a dissociated collection of parts. This is called an ecological view. It is ecological, viewed deeply. It recognizes
No, I have to do this dramatically. It's like all of the people who consider themselves minorities, please stand. If all the people that are considered by society that you live in as minority, please stand. The new view asks those of you who are standing to recognize the fundamental interdependence of all of you for the others, and want you to sit down amongst the rest of these people, because they can't be all they were meant to be without your becoming all you were meant to be. You got the point? That's the new paradigm. Also, the new paradigm says that we who are individuals and who are parts of various societies are all embedded in the cyclical process of nature. So then, for those of you who were left seated, that's because you are sitting on the seat of power. And I wanted you to stay there so that you can use the power of the seat where you sit to figure out how to make those who now are sitting with you not just be newcomers to the field, but to sit in glorious community of interdependent togetherness, embedded and into a matrix where we all learn that as there is a flow from us to you and you to us, that life will be richer, though the process may involve friction, but that's the purpose of togetherness. I think M. Scott Peck did marital counseling and said the purpose of marriage is friction. The purpose of interrelatedness is friction. And sometimes friction is bad, and sometimes friction. Let me go on and let me go on here and suggest, as I see my time, what I really am saying is that I am convinced that what I really want to recruit you for is I want to recruit you for bioantic relatedness. Or to say that I want to recruit you for the promotion of a consciousness of being a part of the bioantic race, in which the human race is a subspecies of the larger framework. What do I mean by bioantic? It is a neologism that I just put together this morning while I was thinking about it. For bioantic says, I am not just a black man. You are not just a black woman. You and I are part of living things, all of whom interrelate to my being who I am. But I am not just a part of living things. I am a part of being things as opposed to non-being things. So you are not looking at a bionic man. You are looking at a bioantic, since antic has to do with being. And everything that bees is a part of me. And if it ain't a part of me, it is a non-being. Because beings are interrelated one to the other. And you are part of an inescapable web of mutuality with me. If you cease to be, I in some way am diminished. And it should be addressed. Now you look black and you look white to me, but it does not matter. Whoever I am impacted by the nature of who you are and who you
Now, with all of that introduction, I'm ready to speak. But I'm not going to talk long here. I'm just read this story and ask you all to have Bible study about its contemporary meaning in terms of race and spirituality. You see, Simon Peter was the one that stood up on the day of Pentecost and talked about God is now pouring out God's Spirit upon all the earth. And in Acts chapter 2, there's a discussion of people from all over the then known world being present. And he said, whosoever calleth upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. And Peter talked that talk. But his being the chief spokesperson on Pentecost did not reveal immediately that he had been recruited for partialistic understanding of his specialness, and did not always understand that the cultivation of specialness in his affirmative action program within Judaism was not designed to make him chosen unto himself, but chosen as an instrument of God to others. He preached about together, one people. The Holy Ghost sat upon all of them. Tongues of fire on all of them. They were all God's children. They understood each other's language. Peter preached, but most people don't live what they preach. They preach, and then the benediction is said, and then they return to their enclaves of isolation and particularity, not knowing that they are a part of a bioontic race of beings. And so the Lord had to work on him and recruit him. So this is the way it happened. You remember in the book of Acts chapter 10, Peter was recruited like I'm trying to recruit you. There are several things, and I have used too much time in the analysis, so I have to do this in shorthand. The first thing, Peter was hungry and went upstairs and fell asleep. This should say, first of all, that we are biological creatures, that we live by receiving from others. Somebody was cooking downstairs. He's upstairs. He's a biological creature. He falls asleep. Until everybody has something to eat and a place to sleep, we do not well. But that's just introductory to the fact. Then Peter, finally, is given a trance. Sometimes, in order to reach where our real values come from, God has to still in subliminally below the level of our awareness. So God put Peter to sleep just enough in a trance so that his sleep patterns would be not quite the delta, not the REM level of sleep. You understand what I'm trying to say? So then God lets down a sheet with all sorts of creeping things in it and says, rise, Peter, kill and eat. And Simon Peter, in his sleep stage, revealed that he was locked into racialistic and ideological particularity separated from the body of the created beings that were his brothers and sisters. He discovered what all of us need to discover, that the impact of our upbringing and inculcation of values makes all of us potentially racist and classicists and elitists and particularists. All of us. It's in you. That's why I have to recruit you, because it's in you. It's in you. You don't act like it all the time. It's in you. We all breathe this air. It's an airborne virus. It's nature. The human being develops his own or her own defense system. It's in us. We'll get at somebody else that we think is a threat to our power and to our well-being. It's in us, not just a militia out there in the country. It's in all of us. So the Lord has to steal in to let us know that under the right circumstances, good old liberal white folks will act just like the racist redneck that they call, I use that term with quotes, good old liberal white folks who talk about a southern redneck will prove that they will do the same thing if the stakes are high enough and the threat is perceived. In fact, that's the biggest problem in America today. There is a national epidemic of insecurititis. People are insecure.
that the power and the hegemony they used to have seems drifting away. Not to black people, not even to middle-class folks. It's drifting away to multinational corporations that now make decisions that cancel out the sovereignty of nation states. So until you can see it, the thing you got to see is that all of us are capable of using our security blanket of race to protect ourselves, and that there are germs on that nasty security blanket we've been carrying around with us, and we put it in our mouth like the little babies. It's all in us. The Lord has to reveal that to us. And if you've had unpleasant experiences, the reason we have to forgive each other is the Lord occasionally allows us to act like the white people we are, or the black people we are, or the Asian people, or the Hispanic, or the Somalian, or the Ethiopian, or the South Sea Islander. God occasionally lets us see that the stuff, doggone it, is circulating in our veins. And if something isn't done, we will do like everybody else. So anyway, God reveals to Peter that Peter is an enemy to the vision of unity that God has. And the way God does that is lets the sheets down, and he tells Peter, "Rise, Peter, slay and eat." And you know what Peter says? No. When God tells us to stop using race as a way to give ourselves preference, we say no. When God says get over these neighborhood divisions, we say no. When God says there must be opportunity on all levels for us to share together, administration, faculty, student body, community leadership, and that we ought not to be able to see one color constellated around the power dynamic and everybody else on the Lord, and we say no. We say no, we say no, we say no, like Peter. Don't worry. God let this thing down again. That's where I come in. I'm here to let the sheet down in the midst of your basic tendency to say no if the price is high. So God lowered it down again and again. And God says, "What I have cleansed, don't you call common or unclean." Now I want to ask you this. Do you think Peter is going to get up and go and walk the walk that he had talked on Pentecost? Is he really going down to Cornelius? These are Italians and he's a Jewish guy. Is he going to go down there? I say he's going to go, and I'll tell you why. And then I must leave time for a benediction so you can get back to your classes. The reason he's going to go is because on the day of Pentecost, the Spirit entered into his life. And there are two things that happen that I think will make sense. And that's what I'm praying will happen for you as I seek to recruit you for your bioontic race activism. One thing, I think Peter is going to walk the walk because the Spirit has tethered itself to him. When the Spirit, I like that word tethered. When you do space exploration and you're going to do moonwalk, it's not wise to get outside of the space capsule and walk unless you are tethered to the mothership. We who are people of faith are tethered to the will and the heart of God through Jesus the Christ. And we don't always do right, but we can't do wrong and enjoy it for long. Because we are tethered to the will of God, and something has to happen to us. That's the first thing. The second, I will experience this afternoon. When I get back to New York, the aircraft perhaps will stop right at the gate, and we'll get up, and he says, "No, we are not at the gate yet. We must turn off the engine, and then a little tug will come and tow us to the jetway." I think Peter is going to do right because the Spirit has him in tow. And it was so that Peter, who had talked the talk, was recruited by God. And because he was tethered and in tow, the Spirit led him down to Cornelius' house. And the Spirit blessed Peter and gave him a quality of life he had never known before in his isolation. And so I close this way. You cannot imagine what will happen when the Holy Spirit gives you enough security in the power of God's tethering love to make it possible for you to live in this world without the benefit of the security blanket of your own ethnic identification, and allows you to have enjoyed God's affirmative action for you so that you can become a champion of affirmative action for others. So I close as I did as I began. I want you all who are a part of this bioontic race from this day to recognize with St. Francis of Assisi that the sun and the moon and the trees and the molecules and the quarks and the positrons, that we are all connected, and that each of these elements is a child of God, and that you and I are called upon to be human race activists by loving all God's children. So here's the way I put it. I looked around the other day and saw how truly blessed this life of mine has been. I have life, health, and comfort, peace and joy within, special care in times of desperation, a helping hand when friends are few. So I asked the Lord, what can I do to turn some thanks to you? I expected mission impossible, a call to service far away. But instead, this simple assignment God sends to us each day. Love my children. That's all I ask of you. Love my children. It's the least that you can do. If you love them as I love them, we shall see them safely through. Love yourself. Love me too. And whatever else you do, love my children.
Dr. Forbes, the response of the audience has certainly expressed our deep appreciation for your inspiring address to us. It is indeed our privilege to have you here and speaking with us today. I want, at the end, to thank a couple of groups that have made all of this possible. The first is the work of the Christensen Symposium Committee, and I will simply read their names. Phil Quanbeck, Marie McNeff, Chris Kimball, Jennifer Kalo, Joe Young, Bob Stack, who arranged for the gospel praise last night, and Ida Simons, who arranged for the breakfast this morning. And then I would like to give a special thank you to Vicki Olson, who's been the chair of the symposium committee, and whose energy and thoughtfulness has pulled all of this together. We are indeed indebted to the work that she has done. And again, I want to thank our persons that have joined us from Concordia in the Spirit in the Desert Lutheran Retreat Center for being part of this convocation through the video conferencing. It is indeed a privilege to be able to share this with persons unable to attend. And now I would remind you that those of you that have reservations, the lunch with Dr. Forbes, with also a possibility of questions and answers, will take place in the Christensen Center in just a few minutes. So if you will adjourn to the Christensen Center for lunch, thank you very much for your presence and participation today.